Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on the time of day that you're listening. Welcome to another episode of Blank Canvas, and this is a very special episode as this episode is our season finale for season 1, but we have a very, very, very special guest with us today. Lauded creative, innovator, pioneer in all her fields, and especially now in the creative space, leading the way and leading the charge on this new creative revolution that we are embarking on. We have none other than Andrea Dempster Chung, CEO and co-founder of Kingston Creative and Bookophilia. Andrea, it is a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show. Thanks for making this happen. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Ewan, and thank you so much for inviting me to have a chat with you and your guests.
All right. So the aim of Blank Canvas is to really have a discussion with creatives around the different facets of creativity. And in looking at that, the aim and the objective is to get persons who are listening, who are tuning in, to try and perceive themselves as a little bit more than they are, and understanding that we all have limitless potential. There has been a principle that I have bought into now that we are all creative and we all have creativity inside of us, despite any job that you may hold, that doesn't limit your creativity. What's your take on the view that we are all creative and we all can be extremely creative humans, irrespective of what you think your talents are?
I mean, that's a very personal, I'll give you a very personal response to it. So I started as an artist, but ended up going into engineering because there was no pathway. There was no career path that my Caribbean parents, my mother is Trinidadian, my father is Jamaican, there was no pathway that they could see for me in pursuing art as a career. So I went into engineering, became a structural engineer. And then I went into business and then entrepreneurship. I've worked in positions at Grace Kennedy, doing strategy and business development, and at Digicel, actually, in telecoms. And I mean, those two positions were project management and then director of human resources and organizational development. So that's in addition to the Bookophilia entrepreneurship path, which was creating a creative space. So I did that on the side. So that's a space for creatives centered around literature. And now, of course, there's Kingston Creative, which is, I found my way back again to creativity as a career, looking at, shifting the ecosystem, shifting the narrative around downtown, doing some placemaking projects and transforming downtown. So for me, I do believe that no matter what you do study or, what your career path ends up being, that we are all creative. We all do have a lot of creativity in us. So sometimes I go to these, meetings and we're speaking to, government officials or different people in the business world, and we're speaking about the creative economy and this kind of thing. And then it turns out that many people sitting around that table who are bankers or who are administrators are also, they used to be dancers, they used to sing, they used to do theater. Especially in Jamaica, you find creatives tend to have a day job. They tend to be turned away, even really talented ones, turned away from a creative career path. So the understanding that we are all creative is even more relevant in Jamaica, a country that produces, I think, more creative people per capita than most other countries. So, yeah, I would definitely agree with that assertion that we're all creative.
I think that's a brilliant point, and that's a beautiful backstory too. So you have a lot of persons now that are probably in a job, but there is a yearn, there's a desire to do more, and they want to lean on their creativity because that's what kind of gets them energized. That's what they probably are up late at night fiddling and doing other things that are pushing that creativity. But there's a fear that this won't make me any money. So as you had mentioned before, we're directed into finding a source of income, and that normally comes through a structural job. But they leave the creativity behind altogether. What would you recommend, or what's your take on persons who have a job, have a talent that they would like to pursue, but are deterred by the fact that they probably can't see an immediate return on this. This is
Mm.
not something that they can start doing tomorrow and it starts paying them next week.
Okay. So I'll start at the macro and then we'll go down to the micro. So at the
Okay.
macro level, if you look globally, the creative economy is worth 2.253 billion or something. Sorry, trillion dollars. It's an insane amount of money that is earned through creativity. So when you start to look around the world and you realize, wow, people with maybe less talent than you are making a lot of money in this industry, you start to understand that it is a viable industry. When you start to pull the growth statistics, the percentages of growth for creativity in different countries around the world, you'll see that it's one of the faster growing economies. As a lot of different fields get automated and, machines take over things that humans used
Right.
to do, creativity is the one area where things are still developing, people are still designing. And so it's fast growing and it's high earning. So when you do that, you kind of have the confidence. You look at the UK and, they're making, I think, 11 million pounds per hour from their creative economy was the last report per hour. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
when you start to get those numbers, you say, oh, so I'm not crazy. This passion that I have, it has value. Because internally
Right.
you feel that what you can give has value or what you're passionate about has value. But sometimes you need to look outside at the big picture and you go, okay, I'm not crazy. And then now you can come back down to the micro. So how do you make that work in a country that trivializes creativity as entertainment? Something you talk over, the
Mm-hmm.
background music at your function. And I think for people who are creative, and you're still a creative even if you have a day job to pay the bills, right? What you are at heart is who you are. So for these creatives who want to really make it into a viable source of income for themselves, they have to start treating it as a business and not a hobby. So step one is, you need to make a business plan. You need to do all the things that entrepreneurs do. You need to see yourself as a creative entrepreneur. So there's creatives who don't
Right.
necessarily need to make money. They want to just do this as a hobby, or maybe they're, insanely wealthy and their family can fund them to just do this as a passion. And they're not concerned
Right.
about
Right.
money. They're doing art for art's sake. And that's great for them.
Right.
But there are creative entrepreneurs who say, I actually want to get a return. I want to live from my craft. I want to live from my talent. And for these people, you need a business plan. You need to find partners because you alone don't know how to do everything. So
Mm-hmm.
trust, building networks, finding the right partners, registering your business, really just taking it seriously as a profession. And then all the other things feed in, knowing how to invoice people, knowing how to price properly for your services. All the entrepreneurial classes that they offer to a tech entrepreneur, for example, in the tech industry, they're still applicable in the creative industries. You need
Mm-hmm.
to know how to do marketing and so forth. So for me, it's about building trust, building your network, building your team, registering your business, and really starting to operate in a business-like way. That means you're not doing like a friend thing. If somebody said, just come and do a little dance at the function, no, it don't take. You have to just break it down to them. The amount of hours that go into the
Right.
choreography, that the travel, the this, the that, break it down like any other
Right.
person does for their service. And I think if you start to respect your craft in that way, you almost have to educate people about the worth and the value. But when they get it, they get it. And then you can operate as a business and then you can be viable and then you can scale and start offering your services here in Jamaica. But also you have to look globally. So Jamaica's 2.9 million people. There's no way that every creative in Jamaica is going to get wealthy just marketing their services locally. We have to start thinking regionally. We have to start thinking internationally and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that we are positioned to make money from the world with our services.
Right. That's a lot for us to take in. And these are all valid points. And it brings to the fore something that I think is also lacking in the creative industry. And something that may be even the reason why I'm not making any excuses for anybody. So, guys, if you're listening, don't take this as a yeah, man moment. But where we are currently in terms of formalizing our business platform and in terms of getting persons to take us seriously is probably one of the challenges that I think that the creative industry faces. So yes, you had made the point of it starts with us, i.e., those who are doing the work and getting persons to take us seriously. But I think there's also some formalization that needs to take place in the space itself so that it doesn't come off as a friend and company business. So I know Andrea, oh, Andrea can do a thing for me, man. But when Andrea sends me her price to say that this is going to cost you $50,000, then I immediately think that Andrea's losing her mind. Like, why am I paying you $50,000? Because it's your work.
Mm,
And it's because it's something that you actually put time and effort and resources into. How do you think that we can start to formalize the industry as other industries are formalized in Jamaica's economic space? How can
mm.
we formalize the creative industry so our talent, our culture that it is built on, culture that we represent everywhere we go, we can beat our chest and say, I am Jamaican, has come from our creative resources. And
Mhm.
that industry now needs to find a way to shift from the friend and company, brethren and things, to let us know, look at how we can structure. How can we possibly take some steps at formalizing what it is that we do?
Yeah, the question you're really asking is around the creative ecosystem. You're saying
Yes,
how can we build a sustainable creative, a healthy creative ecosystem?
yes.
I can tell you the approach that Kingston Creative is taking because this is our long-term goal. I mean, long-term, we want that when that next creative person, creative genius is born in Jamaica, that they can
Mm-hmm.
step out into a healthy creative ecosystem. They don't have to migrate. They don't have to be snapped up by some overseas record company who then retains the profits there, or some overseas publisher who then retains the profits from the publication of their books there. We want them to be able to stay
Right,
right here in Jamaica and be fed, sustained, nourished by this healthy creative ecosystem, and then in turn feed those benefits back into their communities through employment, through spin-off services, etc. So
right.
it's a national conversation. We sit here talking about, creatives, and it's creatives talking to creatives, but this is a national conversation. Like, how does Jamaica achieve the sustainability goals, that it has for itself? How do we achieve Vision 2030? And we at Kingston Creative see it as betting on the winner, investing in the thing that we already know we're excellent at. We know we're
Mm-hmm.
probably better than anybody in the world in terms of culture, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
music, for a tiny little island, our music has traveled around the world, not just our music, but our dance, our
Mm-hmm.
style, our
Our
vibration, our
expressions,
language.
everything. Right.
Precisely. So why not invest in that? So developing a healthy creative ecosystem, right, which of course benefits the entire country long term, that means
Mm-hmm.
having six things in place. One, of course, is the funding. So we need to have proper venture capital that is directed towards creative businesses. We need banks that easily understand the creative business model, right, and are able to assess the viability of creative business plans. If somebody says, hey, I want to make a cartoon and animation, your typical
Mm-hmm.
SME banker is going to go, huh? Because they don't know the
Right.
ratios for those things. So we need
Right.
funding, we need grants, and we need money that is funneled into the creative industries. We also need messengers of the brand, meaning if I wanted to find three scriptwriters right now, where would I go to find them? If I wanted to find three sandal makers to recommend, where would I go to find them? We need
Right.
databases and people who write about the creative industries, a central place where we can actually find all of the associations and all of the people who are in the industry. Only when you know who is there can you promote them and can you,
Right.
put them onto different opportunities. We also need to have space. The people in the theatre industry give a great example. When you had the Ward Theatre, you had a space that, because of its size, made a production viable. The production costs what the production costs, whether the space seats 30 people and you get the value of 30 tickets, or whether the space
Mm-hmm.
seats 3,000 people and you get the value of 3,000 tickets. So to make creative productions viable, you need venues of a certain size and scale. When you look to the UK and they put on the Glasgow Festival, Glastonbury, I mean, it's millions and millions that they make over that time. And it's because
Right.
of the scale. So we definitely need to make sure we have fit for purpose venues, galleries, retail spaces, and performance spaces where creatives can make money from their productions.
Yeah.
We also need spaces for creatives to work, right? That's another thing that's needed in the ecosystem. So affordable office spaces, studio spaces for artists, and this kind of thing. And at Kingston Creative, we believe that the greatest place to cluster those is in downtown Kingston. Why? Just like in San Francisco, you had a whole bunch of, abandoned warehouses, and
Right.
those were taken over by the artists, and then that was sanctioned by
Mm-hmm.
the city, and then you had this viable kind of arts district, right? And
Right.
so we believe that downtown is an excellent space. There's spaces that are completely underutilized, and we want to see a creative cluster happening down there, and it's starting to happen. There are some fashion people that have moved into downtown, and we can see the little trends happening. And so we really want to encourage that over the long term. So you need that creative space for sure. And then you need training, right? So training and development is key. I keep talking about like Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs, they have so much investment. They have people that they have courses, they have things being directed towards them. And the same kind of investment and pipelines and accelerators and incubators need to be directed towards our creative industry for us to have that ecosystem. Yeah. So I've just kind of touched on a few of the things that are needed in this healthy creative ecosystem, but that is how we shift from friend and company
Right.
to viable business. Yeah, that's how we
Right.
shift. We need all of these various elements to be worked on. And so it's not something that one entity can take on. We definitely are doing our part in terms of helping to develop the art district downtown with,
Mm-hmm.
visual art like the 59 murals we've put up in the last 2 years, as well as a
Right.
creative hub that we've just opened, which you are broadcasting from.
Congratulations on that. It's a very nice place, actually. I love it here.
You're in the podcast room right now.
Yes,
But yeah,
I
and we've also opened the Artisan Collective store, which is it's run like a real collective where the artisans make the decisions. It's zero commission and so forth. So
mm-hmm.
in opening these spaces and in transforming downtown into a place where the stigma is lowered, people like coming in. There's people can film their productions there. Different Protege made his music video in Water Lane, and a bunch of artists are rolling up some new murals now. In
Right.
making that kind of focal point, or that home for creativity, and in creating and in delivering the training. I mean, just this year alone, we did about 2,000 odd digital creative sessions in partnership with Sagicor. And then we have also rolling out training through this Catapult program, which is now Caribbean wide. So in terms of training creatives in e-commerce, intellectual property, digital marketing, the skills that you really need now,
Right.
we've been doing our part there, but we need everybody on board really for this to work. It's a big vision, but we need everybody on board. And first of all, of course, the creatives, they need to believe it's possible,
They
and then
need to
everything
believe it's
else can flow
possible.
from that.
Right. And the signing in of and the buying in of the vision that we can actually do this together. I have a
Hmm.
question as it relates to so the processes and elements that you've listed out a while ago. Those are somewhat external to our ecosystem. Yes, we can create things and we can design, we can get our resources together and we can do the best work that we can. But we also need a lot of assistance from external sources, i.e., policymakers, i.e., corporate structures, i.e., as you had mentioned, the grants, etc. But my thought process is that we have a deficiency, whereas there are some decisions that are made that affects national development, and it doesn't include how we continue to become more forward advanced in our creative development as well. Do we create a table where we actually have a round table and have our own discussions and then make our decisions as to what it is that we need to do as the creative ecosystem? Or do we try to get a seat where the decisions are being made on a larger level that can impact our creative output? How do you find that balance happening?
You do both. You have to get a seat at the table. You have to be heard by the policymakers and decision makers. We have met with a number of ministries, from the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, because MyCAF, because we believe that creativity is an industry. We believe it generates commerce. So that's a very
Mm-hmm.
important ministry and minister to get on side. We also, of course, the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, because culture is what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
Um, but the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, right? So many of our creatives are in hot demand around the world. I happened to go to the Culture Ministers Conference in Niger last year. It's the African and Caribbean Pacific Countries, the ACP conference. And the amount of other delegations that came and said, we would love some Jamaican people to come to our this festival in Accra or that festival in this different country. And it was just amazing. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also very, very crucial to the whole thing. So we have, made it our business to engage a lot of these ministries, the JBDC, the Jam Pros, who are here about exporting our creativity, right? They're concerned with, overseas trade. It's everybody's business, and you absolutely have to put yourself on the agenda, right? But at the same time, you have to build your own table, right? So we started that with the meetups. So back in March 2018, we held the first creative networking meetup at F&B downtown, 107 Harbor Street. And it was maybe 30 people. And everybody said what their vision for this thing was, and then they started to network. And then every month since then, we have held a meetup. And then we started to focus on different creative segments. So one month we're talking about dance. Another month we're talking about the theater industry. Another month we're talking about digital. And why I say that's building your own table is because that's getting ourselves together. Right? That's making sure that trust deficit that exists between different creatives, where it's like, oh, I don't want to tell you my idea because you might thief it. Ideas are a dime a dozen. You have to be able to collaborate with people. You have to trust. And so pulling ourselves together and identifying what are the problems in our industry, what are the problems that we have, what are our solutions, that's an important part too. So you make your own table by getting together within the creative sector, but then you also must get a seat at the table by presenting to these different bodies that are there to show them the value and to, try and just get everybody on the same page as to the value of our creativity. What I found was that nobody is confused about the power of Jamaican culture. Nobody. Anytime
that's self-explanatory.
A Chinese orchestra, plays a Bob Marley song or the Prime Minister tweets it out, everybody feels great. We have the feel-good factor. What we need to do is to understand that feel-good can translate into development for this country. We need to see the link between our talent and monetization, and that's the advocacy that we have to do. And it's a very, very important part of what we're doing is the advocacy.
I want to pull it back to our conversations where we had mentioned those persons who are currently probably in a job or at work and trying to look to develop something new. What are some of the pros and cons then of being a freelancer, or the pros and cons of being a freelancer and then getting into that element now where you are your entrepreneur, you are your own boss, you are your own leader, your own CEO, you report to no one but yourself. What are some of the elements to consider for persons who may be sitting on the fence and just kind of wondering, do I take this leap of faith and go after my creative passion, or do I continue to play it safe and just keep this thing going over here as well?
Well, I feel uniquely qualified to answer this question because I have taken the leap many times. Like I've changed careers more times than, I can't even tell you. So starting off in engineering, and then moving into project management and getting qualified as a project manager, as a certified project manager, and then switching over to housing. So, taking a position as a director of technical services within the Ministry of Water and Housing, where I was using my engineering and project management skills, but in a different arena to build 90 different housing developments around the island. And then from there, taking the leap to going to Grace Kennedy into financial services, where I'd never worked before. And, and then from there, opening Bookophilia, which I had never run a retail operation before. And then, going from that back into corporate at Digicel. And I remember the day that somebody called me and said, we want you to be the HR director. And I was like, HR? Like, what? Really? And I laughed. Literally, I laughed. But the point of it is that if you are thinking about making a career change, do it. Make the leap. There's nothing that you can't learn. Just put it that way. You can go and do your training. You can go and get your certifications. And even without a degree in said subject, right? Because sometimes we're very limited. We have this kind of uh, really a limited colonial kind of view of education. Oh, you've trained to be a banker, so
Mm-hmm.
this is your role for the rest of your life. It is not so.
Right.
And in other countries, you find people are not limited by what they studied. Absolutely not.
Right.
Education only teaches you to think. That's all education does. So my engineering degree has taught me to think, to analyze in a certain
Mm-hmm.
way. And then all the experiences, I can apply that to any field. And it's very, very useful in the arts because I know how to build, you know?
Right.
So how to take it from ground zero to, oh, look at this lovely building. So I
Right.
would encourage you, whatever field you're in, definitely make the shift. Now, in terms of being a freelancer and being an entrepreneur, there is a really good book called The E-Myth. And, there's a second book called The E-Myth Revisited. And the crux of it is that a lot of people look at entrepreneurship and they're confused. They think, oh, I've gone out on my own and now I'm an entrepreneur. But they haven't really become an entrepreneur. What they have done is to create a job for themselves. They end up having created another job where in order to get a dollar, so they've stepped out of Mass John's job and they're over here now on their own. But in order to earn a dollar, they have to give an hour of time. Anytime you're in a situation
Mm-hmm.
where an hour of your time has to be spent for you to earn this money, you're in a job. You've just created a job for yourself. When you are an actual entrepreneur, is when you can take yourself out of the equation and there is a business that continues to run. Right? So you don't get there immediately. I mean, I think every entrepreneur, when you first start the thing, I mean, when I started Bookophilia, I'm there in the morning. If I'm cleaning the toilets, I'm doing the coffee, I'm serving people. You do everything. When you first start up,
Right.
that's startup truths. You're doing everything.
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Hands in the dirt.
but Absolutely, and it's the best way because you should know every aspect of your business from bottom to top. Especially if you're telling somebody to
Right.
do something, you should have already done it and know how it's done.
Right.
But my point is that when it gets to a business is when you yourself can step away and your time is not directly proportional to your earning, and that's when you've created a business. Now, freelancing, I think there's a lot of pros. There's a lot of pros to being a freelancer, and it's kind of the way the world is trending now. You have a lot of freedom. You can choose who you work with. And for people who have been in corporate, you know what a blessing that is to be able to choose your clients, right?
Right.
I,
Mm-hmm.
for one,
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
have the freedom of choosing that I only serve creative people, and it's awesome. So, being a freelancer, you choose your clients, you choose when you work. If you feel like working 12 midnight, you work 12 midnight. There's a lot of freedoms around there. You miss out on some of the benefits, of course. But I definitely would advocate for really setting up a business, moving from being a freelancer to actually having a business where if you go on vacation, that business is still running. That means you've set up a team,
It's
you've
still
set up
running.
structures, you've gotten the financing, you've got a pipeline of clients, and things are humming along. And that's when you start to build structures that then can pass on, transmit generational wealth, build the communities
Mm-hmm.
around you because you're employing people. So yeah, that's the goal. That's where you really want to get to.
So
I hope I answered your
whereas
question in
you
some
have
sort of way,
no, you did. No, you did. You did. You did.
in a very roundabout
So
way.
yeah, man. I mean, it's coming from a qualified person. So for every statement made, there's a little note being taken. Um, so for those persons who are currently freelancing or currently just starting in their entrepreneurial journey, and or doing both, what recommendations would you provide for them to actually take their business to the next level, especially given the state of the economy, the state of the world currently? What is the transition? What are some of the things that freelancers and entrepreneurs alike need to look at, whether it be internally or externally, in order to take their business to the next level and continue to do well and or even supersede their own expectations?
I mean, three things. I would look at planning, I would look at team, and I would look at markets. So on the planning side, I believe in having a plan, like a written out business plan, something that shows you how you grow over the next 5 years. It might seem like an academic exercise, but every
Mm-hmm.
time I've invested a lot of time in doing a plan, it has been worth it over and over and over again because you've really thought it through, and then somehow it just begins to manifest and come together. So I definitely advocate in doing a plan. Get some help, download a business plan template, start filling in the sections. It forces you to think about your business from different perspectives, So maybe you're not a marketer, so you wouldn't have thought of this until you start actually filling out this business plan. The next thing after having a plan for your business, so you know where you want to go, right? Your intention is set. Then the next thing is to look at your team. Who are my allies? Who am I working with? Who can be my advisors, even if they're not in my business? Who can I lean on for advice? Who's my board, even before I put a formal board in place? I would say, really don't try and go it alone because it's really about collaboration. Don't be afraid anybody's going to steal your idea. It's not about ideas, it's about execution, So
True,
share your
true.
ideas, build your team, build an awesome team up with people who are smarter than you. I can't
Mm-hmm.
emphasize it enough. It's not about a hierarchy. I have some
Right,
people working Kingston Creative who I am blown away by what they can do, just blown away, and that is the right way to be. Yeah. Anytime you're
right.
the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So build that
True.
team and get people on board informally at first and definitely get your advisors because you'll be surprised how people be willing to help you if they can see your vision. And then the next thing I had said was markets. So in this day and age, as I said, the Jamaican market is very small. And the demand for what you have is huge outside of Jamaica. It might be
Mm-hmm.
hard to imagine, but every single country, if I've been to, Morocco, if I've been to Australia, if anywhere in the world you go, they know about Brand Jamaica. So you have a leg up on any creative from anywhere else in the Caribbean. The fact that you're from Jamaica is an asset, and you
It's
should
a
be looking
bonus.
at it's a bonus, and you need to leverage it, and you need to start
Yeah.
looking at world markets and not just local markets. Make sure you have an e-commerce site. Make sure it pays your money in Jamaican dollars into your Jamaican bank account. But make sure you have your e-commerce
Right.
worked out. Make sure you have your website so that people can find you. Make sure you're a member of different associations and organizations so they can promote you, so they can tell you when there's a business grant coming down the pipeline that fits you. So, you know, make sure your network is tight and that you're looking to the rest of the globe because there is a demand out there for what you personally are offering.
This has been a great session, but we are not done. So that was my time. What I'm going to do now is to move into Q&A. So this is the bonus section for this episode. We have given the opportunity for persons to submit a few questions that they may want to ask Andrea, questions that they may need some guidance and or some advice on in terms of their creative entrepreneurial journey, or even just questions that may just help them become a better person. So I have a few questions here, Andrea, and I'd love to shoot them to you and we can get through them and we can hear. Well, I'm sure they'll be willing to say thank you in person, but I'll thank you on behalf of them. So the first question that I have here is from Janelle, and she's a digital marketer. And her question is, what advice do you have for an entrepreneur in managing multiple creative personalities while still trying to drive success for the business?
That's interesting. And yeah, there are a lot of different. So first of all, there's a kind of a trope that creatives are wild and woolly and out there and don't have a head for business and over emotional and so forth. So we don't want to buy into that trope. Creatives,
Right.
like I said, I've worked in telecoms, I've worked in engineering, I've worked in book selling, financial services. There are divas in every profession. Let me tell you. So you get the same range of personalities across the board. With artists, I find sometimes you'll find a more, what would I say? You'll find people who are very passionate about their purpose or the meaning of what they're doing. And in managing that, you have to allow for it. You have to understand they're bringing all of their being and all of their passion into this work. It's not just a
Hmm.
product to them. So you have to allow for them to be meaning behind this product or this task or whatever it is. And I think once you can allow for the duality of that, If you're in a factory and you're making widgets, then it's just about the widgets. You've made a nail, lovely, make more. But for
Right.
artistic products, it's quite different. There's a lot of nuance. And so you, as a manager in an artistic sphere, have to really look at how am I accommodating, how am I allowing them to express the meaning behind said product or said task, and
Mm-hmm.
am I really
Mm-hmm.
understanding the context, because context really matters when it comes on to culture. There's finer points of distinction that you won't get unless you listen. So for me, I think it's about listening more and allowing people to express their viewpoint and taking the meaning behind the issue into consideration when making decisions around the team.
Okay. All right. So the next question we have is from Andrew, and he's a multimedia creative. So he's asking, should a creative work in an environment exclusively conducive to their needs? And he's specifically asking for 9 to 5. So he's an editor, and he wants to know
Mm-hmm.
if companies should facilitate often quirky needs that creatives have, such as a dark room or a creative room for graphics and or multimedia work to take place.
So it would be good if everybody did. I can definitely. There are some companies that do accommodate that, who do see the value in creativity, even in just creative thinking. So they'll create. You'll see it in how they design their buildings. Even they'll have a quirky
Mm-hmm.
room. They'll have an area with bright colors. It won't just be a gray fluorescent light box, because they
Right.
understand that people need, and even finance people need to think creatively about problems. So having creative
Right.
spaces in corporations, it just makes good business sense, as well as accessing creative spaces when you need it. So I know in London there's a place called Impact Hub, and different businesses, financial businesses in the city, would actually rent Impact Hub, so that their kind of buttoned up guys could have a place that's a bit more funky and a bit more relaxed in order to ideate. So you can either make those spaces within your building, your corporation, or you can access other places. So every meeting doesn't have to be within your office, and I think nowadays, in the age of remote working, right, everybody is
Mm-hmm.
now tuned into, some people work better from home, some people work really well if you give them 2 home days a week, because then they can be in the environment that really feeds their creativity. So I think sometimes you have to ask for what you want as well. So a discussion with HR about, hey, I feel that I need this kind of space. If you guys can't provide this, then would it be fine for me to work from the Creative Hub or from anywhere,
Right.
anywhere
Right.
else that meets those needs, even my home. I
Right.
think as long
Right.
as you are producing results, you're in a really good position to have that conversation. And I always tell people, ask for what you want. The worst you can get is a no, and that's where you are right now. So go ahead and ask, and you can get a positive outcome, or at least you can plant the seed that this is needed, and maybe later it's incorporated. So nothing to lose with asking.
Okay. Our next question is from, I'm going to ask 3 more questions after this, or maybe two. The next question is from Kajay, and she is in IT. She's also a multimedia professional. Well, she states that there are many persons that are now wearing the creative badge and considering
Mhm.
themselves creatives. Where does Kingston Creative draw the line in terms of the group of creatives that you serve?
There are two primary groups. We like to focus on the creatives that are in the community in and around downtown. We feel that they have been underserved, they have been overlooked, and we feel that it is their creative efforts that have put Jamaica on the map in the first place. So, in everything that we do, we're always saying, okay, how many creatives from the community are involved in this event, have their products in this store, are using the hub, etc. So, that's one area. The other group of creatives that we really focus in on is creatives that make their living from being creatives.
Mm-hmm.
There are Sunday hobby artists, and we love them too, but the focus really is creative entrepreneurs, people who say, I am doing this and I need to see a return from this, and this is my life. This is my life's
All right.
work, and this is how I eat, and this is how my family gets supported. Those creatives are primary group. because we have to also focus in on them simply because they're doing this all day, every day, and that deserves a different level of respect. So we had a grant going, for example, the Catapult grant.
Mm-hmm.
It's a COVID relief grant. It's actually right now 1,175 artists from 25 countries have benefited. And in the early days when the open call was out, somebody said, "I'm thinking of getting into creativity. Can I apply for this grant?" And we had to be super clear that no, this is COVID relief for people whose living is as
Right.
artists,
Has
as
been affected.
artisans, as cultural practitioners. Yes. So, we
Right.
do have to draw the line sometimes. And in cases like those, it was very, very clear. This is for practicing cultural practitioners, creative entrepreneurs, artists, and artisans. And those are the four groups that we always cite.
Okay. All right. The next question is from Dija, and she's asking, how important is it for persons to have an online presence in today's society as a creative?
Hi, Deja. I am so glad you asked this question, girl. It is beyond important. It was important before, and we kind of were all, yeah, you need to have a website. Yeah, you need to have an artist bio. Yeah, need to have your e-commerce. But I think what COVID has done, one of the positives, is that it has forced us to really start looking at the intersection of creativity and technology. You know, you can't be a creative and not have access to your community, to your customers, to your fans. You just can't be a creative and not have your social media set up and your website set up. It is imperative. And coronavirus has brought this into very, very sharp relief. The artists who were
Right.
able to continue doing business already had a selling platform. There are some
Right.
people who I saw, their pivot wasn't very, very difficult. They had invested already in putting up their site, in photographing their works and having the stuff there, and they could continue doing business. People already knew who they were,
Mm-hmm.
and I think as we start looking at, Latin America and the Caribbean going into, a recession post COVID, things are going to get a little bit tighter, within this
Right.
small space. We're already in a small space and things are going to contract. And so it's very, very, very important that you have a window to the world, and that window is through digital. So, we just ran a series called Create Tech, and it's about, okay, if I was doing a tour downtown before on foot with people, how do
Mm-hmm.
I now make that tour digital? How do I use VR
Right.
to make that tour
Right.
and people can watch it online and donate? How do I use Airbnb experiences to be a live host for that tour, right? And if you haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb experiences, do look it up. How do we use AR so that a person who can't come and see my mural can click here and see an animation or see
And see
something
it.
more
Right.
interactive that will draw them in? Create Tech is an area that I know the UK has been championing for years. They've had the Create Tech conference, and it's an area that we think is super, super important going forward. So creatives, do look out for more digital training and more, programs along this avenue, because we believe that's how we get access to the world and how we get revenue coming in.
Okay. All right. And the last question is from Derek. He's a multimedia and aspiring photographer, and he's asking, how important does a good photo play in generating and maintaining a creative brand presence?
Mm. I'll take you back to April 2018 when we did our first art walk. The Jamaica Photography Society, which was then being led by Donette Zacco, they came on board and all of their photographers, and they said, look here, this transformation in downtown is something that needs to be documented. And we volunteer to take amazing pictures for you, to help you spread the word. We
Mm-hmm.
understood very, very early that unless we could communicate visually what was happening, unless you could show that performance in that abandoned building, show that artist doing a pirouette on the concrete, show, the hundreds of people walking through Trenchtown, you know, um,
Right.
we wouldn't be able to communicate what was happening. Photography is a really powerful medium. I would say visual arts generally, but photography is how you can convey a lot of very important messages to your customers. And so, yeah, it's super important. Product photography and also event photography. So I would say definitely invest in hiring a professional photographer for your events. I would add on to that, We're now doing a lot of live streaming. People want to see content as it's happening. So
Mm-hmm.
do invest in somebody with a really good camera who can send some snippets of whatever you're doing live. If you're an artist, do record, use video. Video is, I would say probably more powerful a communicator than the still. And I think both should be used now in this digital age. Yeah, both need to be used to get that message across effectively.
Andrea, this has been excellent. I thank you so much. I've learned so much from talking to you about Kingston Creative, about the processes that the creative ecosystem is going through, and how it is that we can actually rally together and make this thing not just a vision, but an actual way of life and implement it. I don't know how quickly we will be able to enable those that are listening to actually drive it home. But I think there's a lot of action points that persons can take away from this conversation. And I do hope that those who are listening will find the information as useful as I have. Andrea, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Persons may not know we've been really trying to do this podcast like
That is
multiple
so
times. I think
true.
this is our
Yeah,
this is
this
our
is an
fourth
effort to
attempt.
definitely. This is about resilience, resilience and
Yeah.
pivoting. This is the third software we've tried, but we made it happen. And for people who want more information, of course, I got to do the plug. So we got to plug the Kingston Creative website, which
Right.
is www.kingstoncreative.org. And of course, go and join one of your associations. If you're not a member of some association, if you're in film, there's JAFTA. If you're in dance, there's Dance Jamaica. Please go and find your association and plug in. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
volunteer with us, there's also a link on our website. So, you can get involved and do your little bit. We are 3 years into a 10-year plan, Ewan, and the amount of change that's happened in the 3 years is frankly it's astonishing, when you sit back and look at
Yeah.
it. So I am sure that by, year 10, we're going to be in a different place and looking back and really celebrating. I have champagne on ice, so
All
I'm
right.
keeping it there for the next 7 years.
All right, no problem, no problem. I'm hope I'll be there. I'll be a part of the team, and I'll be there to celebrate with you.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely.
but again, this
And
has
thank you for this
been
opportunity. I really appreciate this
no,
opportunity to talk to your community. Hopefully people
thank
get
you.
something out of the convo.
No, definitely. And even by the questions that were submitted, I knew that there were persons that were tuning in and eager to listen in and share their knowledge, hopefully after with what they have learned. So, I mean, this has been a blessing. Thank you so much, Andrea. All the best with everything that Kingston Creative will be coming with. 2021 is going to be a brand new year,
That's
and
right.
we are looking forward to all of the great work that you'll be doing for the creatives and with the creatives.
I just have to
Um,
mention the United Nations has declared 2021 the year of creative economy for sustainable development. Like the UN is saying
wow.
that your creativity is a tool to achieve sustainable national development. So I am dying for 2021 because it is a wow. We're not
Yeah.
crazy. This is a way forward and we should all be really rallying behind this call when 2021 comes. And of
I'm
course
looking forward to
before.
that. Of course, of course. And now is the time then to actually really get your ships in line, get your ship sailing, get your team together, get the crew together, and really start doubling down on what it is that you really want to achieve for your life. And
Absolutely.
not just for a year. It's not about making a resolution for a year. It's about making a resolution that is going to change, impact, and create something new
And
um,
meaningful.
and meaningful,
Yeah,
absolutely, as to what it is that we are all trying to do, and that is to be better and live a better life.
absolutely.
So I'm excited.
Yay, me too.
So thank you again, Andrea, and we will be in touch. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much.